All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Action Effect podcast with your boy Big Z and Dan Wiggy. We're excited, man. Episode 4 on buying real estate for free. So, we actually have a super cool story to tell you guys on how we acquired a property literally for $0 down. Technically, if you want to be real technical, we spent $100 to acquire this property. And we'll deep dive the whole thing. But before we do, guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, smash the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment, let us know how we're doing. Even if you think we suck, let us know so we can get better. And if you're watching this, if you're listening to this on a podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and subscribe to our podcast. We are deep diving all kinds of different business and real estate and investments, finance, you name it, we're going to cover it. So anyways, let's deep dive episode 4. So Dan, this property, super amazing property in a great area. I'm not going to steal the thunder here though, because you're actually the one that talked to this individual. You are the one that ended up locking this deal up. So go ahead and tell the story on how this whole thing started.
Yeah, man. So definitely pretty excited about it. We've obviously been, really deep diving some mentorship and some training to acquire properties like this, because once we found out it was possible, we wanted to just really go get our first one. And we've been taking action, talking to different homeowners in different situations, and set up a phone call with this individual, and was able to, on the, first or second call, talk to him and help him understand that, there weren't a lot of overall solutions for his specific problem. Right. And what we were able to kind of come in and bring to the table was something creative to, also put some money in his pocket and be able to help him out of a tough situation. So that's probably one of the bigger, more exciting things, is be able to help him and put him in a better situation, getting out of that property that, maybe wasn't the best fit for him personally. Right. But, in short, what we're doing is we're coming into this property with, like Zach said, $100 of our own money. We partnered with another individual who's giving us the down payment, but we're actually taking over this property called Subject to. So we're actually coming in and we're going to take over his payments. The beauty of this thing and the best part about this deal is it's a 3.1% interest rate. Pretty low monthly payment, but I mean, more importantly, interest rates right now, if we went to go get a new loan, especially on a secondary property, we're probably looking at, 6 to 8%, which obviously from a investment standpoint really just kills our cash flow, I think. So that's what's nice. We haven't, settled 100% on an exit strategy. I think we have a few ideas, but I think the exciting part about it is, there's a lot of properties out there that during 2021, they either refinanced or bought, and we're able to come in and get interest rates at that level, which is huge. So that's what I'm excited about. I know. Why don't you talk about a little bit about some of our possible exit strategies that we can, use for this property?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And before I dive into that, let's kind of talk about the numbers a little bit. So this is a property that is around a $400,000 ARV, or after repair value, for anybody that doesn't know what that means. And we're acquiring it. It has about $295,000 left on the mortgage, like Dan said, at 3.1%, which is amazing. So we're going to already have around $100,000 in equity. This gentleman, we're giving him $10,000 to essentially walk away from the property. He's behind like another $10,000. And then we're going to have some closing costs and things like that. So like Dan said, we actually brought a private money lender in, which we'll go over those later in the episode. But what it allowed us to do was essentially acquire this deal for literally no money at all. So, which is absolutely amazing.
And one thing before you kind of dive into that is I do want to bring up kind of where we were at in his situation a little bit more, so everyone can understand that, what we're looking to do, it's a lot faster. Yes, this gentleman could have probably gone and listed it and maybe sold it for a little bit higher. However, the problem with that, there just wasn't enough time, right? And time right now, especially in this market, it's not 2021 anymore where houses are selling within 2 to 3 days. You're lucky if your house is selling within 2 to 3 months in most places, depending on the price point, just because of the interest rates and monthly payments and that sort of thing. So being able to really get him out of this situation as quickly as we are, as well as taking into consideration the fact that every single month that goes by, it's just more interest and fees that accrues. And ultimately, it's more money that we're not able to give to him because of the way the deal needs to be structured for us to make it make sense.
Yeah, which, from a selling standpoint, we're able to really tap into that motivation. Hey, look, sir, your arrears are essentially growing by the day. And so, let's get this taken care of for you. So you don't have to go into a bad situation. This gentleman was going to be foreclosed on. And essentially we can, save his credit, save that from being on his record, and we can acquire a great deal and a great area too. So we can't say the address. We haven't officially closed on it yet, but also the algorithm on YouTube will not allow us to do so. So anyways, let's talk about the different exit strategies that we can do. So I know one of them, we can, of course, wholesale it if we wanted to. I know, Dan, you and I ran some numbers. We were thinking we might be able to put about $20,000 in our pocket if we decided to wholesale. Do you have anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, if we were to wholesale, a creative finance deal is going to be a little bit different than wholesaling a actual cash deal. Wholesaling, just the biggest two differences, if you're not aware of what that is going and locking up a property for a cash amount, then having a new end buyer come in and pay a higher cash amount before close of escrow. So the paper's just changing hands ultimately. Same concept with creative financing. However, the biggest difference is just kind of the entry fee. So our entry fee total in on the deal is about $20,000. We would just go find an end buyer who's willing to pay above that. And then that's where we would keep the difference. So that would be one strategy we could utilize.
Absolutely. And guys, rule of thumb, if you're out there wanting to do creative deals, you really want to be at 10% or less when it comes to your entry fee, like Dan was saying. So another one is we could technically take the property down subject to, and then we could wholesale it, which essentially means we could just list the property. We would probably list it a little bit aggressively so it didn't sit on the market too long, because of course we do have to pay the mortgage every single month. We have an HOA, we got to pay our private money lender, all that good stuff. So we wouldn't want it to sit there too long. So we'd probably aggressively list it, and we could essentially, after running some numbers, probably make anywhere from $40,000, maybe $50,000. Dan, do you want to add to that at all?
No, that one's pretty straightforward. I mean, we would just come in and decide that, hey, we don't want to keep this, and we're looking for someone who's going to come in and more than likely live in the property. That's where that's kind of the only way that would make sense.
Yeah, we could sell it to a conventional buyer or like an FHA, first home buyer type person. And the nice thing too, guys, is this thing has equity. Like I was saying, it's got $100,000 in equity. There's a lot of room there to pay a realtor, those sorts of things. Dan's wife's actually a realtor, so we would of course use her in that scenario. But option number 3 would be we could just take it down. We could essentially put a tenant in there. We could be the landlords of that area, and we could rent it out. It wouldn't have a ton of cash flow as a rental, but it would still be positive cash flow in that scenario. And I mean, Dan, the photos of it, I mean, it's a good looking property. It does not really need any work. It's turnkey, is it not?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much ready to go. And really one of the biggest factors to consider on, just keeping it as a long-term rental would be the appreciation in that area is definitely going up. So like the difference between once we sell it, we're kind of out of it and we lose out on all of that appreciation versus being able to hold on to it as a long-term rental, short-term rental, whatever we decide to do. We can, as that grows, we can look up in 5 or 10 years and see where that's at. Because the other thing that we remember is we're paying down that mortgage that's from 2019 already, right? So we're just going to continue to pay that down and just build more and more equity ultimately in the home.
Yeah, which is amazing. I mean, at a 3.1% interest rate, this guy's mortgage payment is is right in the pocket. It's money. So number 4, we could essentially find, which, I've already reached out to one or two of these, just, as in case we decide to go this route, but we could do what's called sober living, where essentially we wouldn't manage the property. There's people out there who manage sober living properties, and they'll pay anywhere from 1.5 to sometimes two times rent because of what they get. And so, Dan, touch on what sober living is and how, they rent out each individual room and whatnot.
Yeah. So sober living is just going to be a spot where everyone kind of is, they rent out rooms or beds, depending on the size of the home and how many beds are in there. And it's for people, obviously, part of that community, to be able to come in and live sober in the home. And it from an investor standpoint, it does make it a little bit more lucrative, because obviously 1 to 2 times or 1.5 to 2 times the rent, you're going to be able to make more cash flow month over month. And you also still get that element of consistency of a long-term tenant. So same thing from sober living, as well as like traveling nurses and utilizing some of those host sites to be able to rent it out for 4 or 5 months at a time. Because now you're not necessarily playing in an Airbnb game. You're more able to charge rent for anything beyond 30 days, really. And they do get a discount because it's not the Airbnb pricing, but for the investor and the homeowner, you definitely make more money on doing something like that.
Absolutely. And another benefit too is obviously we are essentially hiring a manager, or a manager is paying us to take over that property. So we don't have to actually manage it ourselves, which becomes very nice. But what you just brought up is the next exit strategy, and that's Airbnb. So this happens to be kind of like the mecca of the state of Arizona as far as where, good for Airbnbs, because like you just mentioned, a lot of traveling nurses, a lot of old people. Any old people out there listening to this, I don't mean that in a rude way, but my grandma, for instance, loves to travel here and stay here for months at a time. And so it makes Airbnb very, very lucrative, which is actually, something we've been looking into.
Yeah. And the nice thing about like a midterm to a longer term Airbnb style is there's less fees involved, because people are actually living there for more than 3 or 4 days at a time. So you don't have to have the cleaning come every single, once, twice a week sometimes. And management is going to definitely be a lot easier on that. And the other thing I like about it too is typically a lot of those are paid up front. So that's a nice kind of injection of capital to be able to go and utilize that in other areas that you want to do. So that's one strategy. The other one, I think we were considering kind of going back to actually selling the property. The first one we talked about was having a buyer come in and kind of get their own financing and pay it off. There's also another option for us to go in and sell it on a wrap, right? So where we go and sell the property with the financing in place, and we could still sell it for that higher after repair value, the market value, at a different interest rate. And the benefit of that is maybe we can beat the bank's interest rate. So it does make it a little bit more appealing and attractive to our market. Downside of that is obviously you lose out on the equity after a certain point. You're capping yourself to what you sell it on. Biggest difference is now they're turning around and financing that equity from you instead of just going and getting a loan and paying you out completely. But if the house appreciates, then you're missing out on all that appreciation.
Yeah. But like you did say, you can get a really nice down payment typically from those types of buyers. Also, we a lot of times you can add a little bit of maybe it's a $400,000 house. You might be able to sell it for 420, 430, something like that. Add a little bit of equity above it. But yes, you're right. You do lose out on that equity and depreciation and all that jazz. So that's why we were kind of potentially not looking that route as far as where we want to go. We have been talking a lot about potentially turning this into an Airbnb. And for any of those of you guys who are like most of the population, you go on vacation, maybe for like a weekend, maybe a week, what have you. It's way different when you stay long-term. So like when me and Alyssa, my fiance, were looking around in Florida, we would stay in a place for an entire month. And I was not used to this because I'm always used to like 2 or 3 days at a time. but that place did not get cleaned the entire time we were there. I'm like, what is going on? This doesn't make sense. I figured they would come like once a week, but they don't. It really, if people come in an area and stay long-term, like you said, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, then that just eliminates a lot of expenses during that entire time, which you can really boost your cash flow.
Yeah, the one downside, I guess, about furnished living, and that's one of the bigger difference between Airbnb and like midterm rentals and all that stuff, is having it furnished versus a long-term rental. Someone's going to come in there, they're going to bring their own bed, their own couch, their own furniture. Now, obviously, that's an upfront cost that you need to consider to factor that in, right? So the nice thing is we would definitely utilize private money for that, to be able to keep our own personal money into the deal very minimal. Why don't you talk a little bit about our private money and the setup that we have with that, and how we're going to plan on paying that back, and how it's going to be a massive, massive win for not only him, but other future private money lenders that we utilize.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll kind of touch on, how this even came about. And guys, this is really the power of social media, right? I mean, anybody that follows Dan and I, we try to be very loud on social media. And what I mean by loud is, we just like to talk about what we're doing. That's one reason why we have this podcast. And, I got a phone call from an individual that said, hey, I have X amount of dollars that I really want to put into real estate. Do you have any deals, essentially? And at the time we didn't, but about a week later, we came across this property, gave him a call. I said, hey, look, here's terms I'm offering you. What do you think about this? And essentially we said, hey, we'd like to have $30,000 and we'll give you a 12% interest rate over a 5-year term. So in interest only payments too, right? So he is going to essentially make $300 a month for 5 years. So $18,000. And then at the end of 5 years, we're going to balloon payment back his principal of 30 grand. So to him, he was like, man, this is a no-brainer. We told him where the property was. He looked it up. He got super excited. He obviously really likes the area. It's a great area. And in fact, afterwards, about 3 or 4 hours later, he's like, hey, let's go get some more, right? So he got super excited. So anybody out there that might have money, that might be looking into, hey, I would really like to get into real estate, and I have cash to do so. Dan and I are acquiring properties every single week that we would love to partner with you on and make you money. And so, a lot of these deals are similar to this one, where somebody can make, essentially cash flow for doing absolutely nothing. And we come across these every single day. Do we not, Dan?
Yeah, no, there's a ton of opportunities, especially when you're actually focusing more heavily on being in that arena. You start to realize there's a ton of opportunities, whether it's you sourcing the deal, or other people that are sourcing the deal that don't want to hold on to it. And you can come in and do that. And the other thing is too, from a private money standpoint, is there's so many ways that we could structure that, right? With this setup, I really like this because it gives us 5 years to be able to kind of have that buy down. Obviously our cash flow, we're just going to put, a bunch of that into reserves anyway. Don't foresee any issues, over that period of time to be able to run into that. Right. So some scenarios we could do too is like, depending on certain deal structure, some sort of equity in the deal, some sort of piece of the cash flows, play with the interest rate. There's really no specific rules that we have to stay by, but we want to make it make sense for not only us, but also, the people that are working with us and letting us borrow their money to get into deals and acquire real estate like this.
Absolutely, man. No, it's amazing. And, it's fun partnering with people. It's fun making people money. We obviously are learning a skill set that a lot of people don't have, that they want to know, but maybe they have money and they're like, hey, I would love to partner with you guys, team up with you guys on your skill set. I got the cash, let's produce some income. So it's definitely awesome. So Dan, obviously we want to keep buying more properties. And what are we doing right now to find more properties? Kind of touch on maybe a little bit about our system. You don't have to necessarily deep dive into the nuances completely, but just kind of tell our audience a little bit of how we're even finding these properties.
Yeah, so we're utilizing a lot of different, the majority of them, you'd be surprised on how much is public record for certain things and certain information that you're looking for. We do talk to realtors all the time. We talk to realtors who have had listings sitting for a while Because one thing I've noticed and one thing that I've learned is a lot of realtors are, if they just came into the industry in 2019, 2020, they experienced, a booming industry. And now it's a different time, right? So just being able to kind of educate and offer a solution and have those types of conversations with them. And then also leveraging a VA to be able to help us set up appointments, because me and you both are very busy in our regular day-to-day job, managing the solar team like we've talked about. And, it helps to be able to have someone kind of bring you opportunities and just have people to talk to. And we've also set up some automations in our system so that, we have automated text messages replying to certain text messages, right? So then when we do have free time in the afternoon, we're not wasting it sifting through different leads. We already know which ones already replied and have some sort of general interest. And at that point, now we can come in, bring the human element in and kind of have that conversation. We know where to focus and where our energy can be worthwhile. And then also, just working with wholesalers as well, just wholesalers who are either new to the industry or they don't, they're not familiar with creative financing, and they want to have an element of being more competitive to when they're talking to sellers and providing a different solution. So,
yeah, that's so key, man. I mean, especially realtors out there, any realtors that may be listening to this podcast or watching this YouTube video, or if this becomes a reel on our Instagram, if realtors out there, you guys have listings that are sitting, obviously, if that listing expires and you're not getting paid, reach out to us. Let us see if we can't help you guys. Either we can buy it, or we have an entire network that buys just like we do, and we can help you guys get paid, so that you at least put money in your pocket and you don't lose that listing. I mean, obviously, you guys work very, very hard to get your listings, and if it's not selling in this market, let's utilize some other creative strategies in order to get you paid and also take care of your seller. Because we're constantly looking for more properties, like Dan was saying, and that is a great way where we can all team up and we can all take care of your seller. And then, yes, we do utilize VAs, or what are called virtual assistants, to essentially help create appointments for us. So that way Dan and I don't have to sit there and cold call a bunch of people. Because like Dan said, we're busy running an 8-figure solar sales team right now. We're doing a ton of business, a lot of stuff that we have to do with that. We do not have time to sit there and waste, hours on end calling a bunch of, essentially filtering leads out or sifting for gold, as we like to say. So a VA can really help with that. And same with automations. And then any wholesalers out there, you guys, we're buying in Arizona, Texas, and Florida. So if any of you guys have deals out there, or better yet, if you have leads that their equity is not there, maybe it doesn't work as a wholesale deal, let us know. We'd love to talk to those people, and then we can still get you an assignment fee and get you paid as well. So we can partner on those also. So Dan, any final thoughts before we wrap up this podcast on buying real estate for free?
Yeah, nothing. I guess one thing I would want to touch on is just to kind of clarify. I know I breezed over it a little bit in the beginning, but talk about subject to a little bit. We're simply just coming in and taking over payments. The loan is not going to be in our name. We're not going to have to run credit. We're not going to have to assume the loan. We're leaving the loan as it is. And there's thousands of transactions that happen across the US like this, probably, every single week, right? Definitely it's a unique concept. There's a lot of questions and intricacies about it when, for the seller that they may have and things that they want to clarify. But it's a huge tool, especially kind of in this market, the way that it's very uncertain right now. I think if you are looking to acquire property, it's definitely a way to kind of sharpen your skills and add a tool to your tool belt to be able to go and do something like that.
No, absolutely, man. And it's funny too, because it's kind of a different sale. Like when we're talking to these homeowners, I'm literally asking them, hey, why don't you list it? Hey, have you talked to your mortgage company about being able to keep your house? Have you done all these things, X, Y, Z, instead of essentially just going at it like, hey, I want to buy your house. We're trying to help them in every avenue possible, and then being like, oh, wow, none of those avenues work. Well, here, I got a solution for you. Let's help you out. put some money in your pocket, and we can take over your payments, which I wish I would have learned this strategy years ago. This is the single-handedly the best real estate strategy I think that there is. I mean, unless you're like Blackstone and you can raise $30 billion to just buy up whatever you want, this is the best this is the best strategy for the average Joe to learn in real estate and acquire properties. And it's absolutely amazing.
And I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But, we're looking at another deal right now, and the nice thing about this is we don't have this deal that has literally no equity. It's actually probably 10,000, maybe about 10,000 under equity, negative equity, and there's still a way for it to make sense because of the location. Short-term rental will be booming there. It's actually right near the football stadium by the Arizona Cardinals, so I know it would definitely be a huge area. A couple of spring training facilities, a couple hospitals. So as long as the monthly payment and the numbers make sense, there's so many different people. We also know people who don't even care about, sometimes the cash flow, right? They just probably need it for depreciation on their taxes. They need to go buy a house to drive down their tax liability. And then, they don't care too much. We're not looking overall just at one or two specific things to evaluate a deal. It literally leaves us open to be able to complete 90, 95% of opportunities out there that we come across. So it makes us very, very versatile, which I'm excited about because it's the golden age in real estate coming up.
It is, man. The next 3 to 5 years is go time. I mean, put your hard hat on, get to work, and acquire as many properties as you can. And, Dan, you brought up such a great point that I want to touch on before we end this podcast. Guys, we grow up with the wrong terminology, right? We always hear cash is king, cash is king. Cash is not king. Cash flow is king, right? And if it cash flows, whether it has equity or not, we're going to be able to take it down and we're going to be able to continue to make money every single month. And if you don't have a balloon payment, which we try to always negotiate no balloon payment, which means we can literally just ride this thing out until the mortgage is paid off if we wanted to. And therefore, we are going to cash flow every single month, no matter what. And rents are only going up. We're becoming a renter nation. And so the cash flow is essentially always going to be there for the most part. So, guys, I encourage you, look into it. If you don't want to look into real estate and you have money, reach out to us. We'd love to do deals with you. And, this is the end, wrapping up episode 4 of Buying Real Estate for Free. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, smash the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment on what you would like us to talk about next. And if you're listening to this on podcast, please give us a 5-star review, as we want as many people to benefit from this episode as possible. So thank you, guys. We're heading out.
Hell yeah.